Hi, hi, hi. So, hi, my name is Rima Henderson, and this is actually my first YouTube video that I'm doing, filming myself. Um, so, really excited, and today's topic is going to be on Black trauma. Actually, I have my notes here that I'm going to pull. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic. It's actually been something that I've wanted to talk about for a hot minute now. And not just like, but you just feel led to do certain things. So I also picked this as my first topic for my YouTube video. So there could be somewhat of a mission video, like a mission based video that I could have. And have something to return to. Something to return to when I forget the reason why I started this channel, or when I forget the reason why I started this channel, or if that ever comes, or just something that I always know the intention behind why I started recording videos. So that's what today's video is about, and that's kind of the reason and the motive behind it. So I'm calling this like my mission video. But trauma within the human experience, I'm going to move my nose closer, even biblically, we can read how harsh conditions were for our predecessors. Um, and I think it's something that we actually often forget, that a lot of people had to live in order for us to be alive today. In 2022, there's thousands upon thousands upon probably millions of people that had to live, have children, survive, aka that's food, water, shelter, all the basic needs to live, to be covered, and then to have you. That's pretty damn impeccable when you think about it that way. And so, for example, we can read about the harsher community rules, such as stoning a person to death or stoning a child to death if they disobey their parents or if they steal. And, a big one, nailing people to the cross for punishment. These are harsh punishments that we would not use today, although in certain states. That's another topic for another day. But we aren't unfamiliar with trauma. As far as humans go, um, humanity has faced famine, drought, devastating weather events, and that list of complexities as it trickles down is, continues. It just could continue for forever. Um, and there's a such thing as um, transgenerational. I hope I'm saying this right. Transgenerational. Oh, and these are just a few pictures of, this is all the shit we faced. An ice age, famine, like it's told about in stories, like crazy natural events. I can't remember the name of the city at the moment, but over there by Italy, entire cities wiped out by volcanic eruptions and all of these things. So this picture is so pivotal because I feel like it kind of speaks to one of the major points in this video, which is transgenerational trauma. So there's been some studies recently, and I believe it is called the transgenerational effect of trauma in PTSD. So when we experience a trauma, or just humans in general, so this could be someone thousands of years ago, this could be present day, when they experience trauma, there's an epigenetic modification that happens within the person's DNA. So literally changes being made to their genome and the genes that they could actually pass down to their children. So you end up being the person that experienced the trauma. It gets stored inside of your DNA as how they say water has memory because it's been on the earth so long. It's the intelligence that the body is created with, that we've been created with. And so we actually end up holding that trauma inside of ourselves. It attaches itself as a gene, and then it can actually be passed down to you. And so I find it really interesting because when you think about it, have you ever had a moment of not experiencing something, but you have this own, it's like beyond empathy. It's almost like you directly relate to it. And this could be something that a grandmother or someone else experienced, or I know, like, I know a lot of times in the Black community, watching a movie about slavery draws up a lot of emotion sometimes. And it's probably because we are the direct descendants of people who experienced those things. So there's this just large talk about trauma linking itself to DNA. So proving we can genetically pass off harsh experiences, positive ones too, but there's also been studies, and I don't know if this is still ringing true, but I think there's a saying out there that your brain attaches itself more to negative experiences more than it does to positive experiences. I do believe it's equal, because I feel like any work that you do within yourself is also passed down to your child. So you are passing off harsh experiences, positive ones. There's a lot of things that are in DNA as well. We have to remember how well constructed we are. So things like music and art are right next to genes that could be related to eye color, or what hair color you're going to be born with, or the color of your skin. So it's just very, very, very interesting. So to shift that point of view, when you think about trauma, it's almost like if you look at all of these things. I'm going to go back to this slide. The people that survived this, the people that survived this are the reason why you are alive today. And I know I said this earlier, but when you think about it, because there's this whole thing now, not everyone wants to have children, not everyone wants to get married. These people found partners, they sought food, they hunted and provided shelter to survive the terrain. And all of these repeated efforts, life over lives, is the reason why you're here. And so you have to understand those qualities is like top tier human being. You are an elite product. And I think another thing that is said scientifically is that there were other Homo sapien species. So we are Homo sapiens as far as our species, but there's other Homo species that used to exist other than Homo sapiens. And they died off because they either did not evolve fast enough to survive. However, whatever methods they use for survival, it could be a wrong decision. Being barren, maybe not having any children, so your lineage literally dies there. There's so many factors, but you are the best of the hunter and the gatherers. That's all I'm going to say there. So keep that in mind. It's just something to let sink in when you think of all the people who had to consciously decide to survive. I mean, it may not have been conscious, but I'll speak on that soon. For Black people, I definitely do think it's a conscious decision with all the strife that has happened, especially in the country of America. So the next point I want to bring up is, in addition to all of those things, and in addition to everything that I said, controversy is nothing new. And I might get on my soapbox about this, because there's this new trend that we should uphold people, especially with the tool of social media, to everyone's being held to a standard. But it's like, who's created this standard? Like, why is there some form of like a shaming for independent thought, or this condemnation for thoughts that don't align with this oneness of personality? It's almost like we've created with social media this one personality that has a certain form of humor, a certain political view, a certain political correctness, And if you are not subscribed to that, it's very triggering for people. So I think I think it's a beast that's been created because we want more amicability amongst humans. I don't know if that's a word, but we want to be more amicable with one another. I think we think that is the solution to peace. But I think it's not. I think if we accept that we are all really individuals, and we really seep into independent thought and knowing that our opinions may be different from others, but may be valuable, that it probably would be a better generator of peace than having this one line of thought. So I say that because controversy is not unfamiliar to humans either. Just like with trauma, controversy is not unfamiliar as well. Controversy over resources, beauty, religion, power, authority, high level disagreements, two men, two rulers having a disagreement have led to wars. So it's not new to us, and our response is in our response to certain things when in response to controversy are also things that I feel like are linked inside of us. So we have to understand all the pros and the cons of tribal arguments lie inside of you. So the pros and cons of community building, the pros and cons of linguistics, language creation, making languages. And then that's not even the hard part when you think about it. I don't want to say the hard part, but you have language. That's amazing. That's great. Now we agree on what is this and this is that. But then there's communication, and that's totally separate from language. So these fundamentals of society that we've created, there's a lot of hardship that comes with that. And you have to imagine I've said tribal arguments. You have to understand, like, when people have this innate fear of speaking out, that could be linked to your ancestors. It's linked to a pain of humanity in itself. Because if you are in a tribe and then you do something or you say something that is against the beliefs of the tribe, and it may not be a core belief, it may be, I don't know, it could be having a disagreement with an elder or disrespecting the leader, or if you were a man and leadership came in the form of who's the best, tallest, biggest, strongest fighter, and you're just a young man coming up who happens to be tall and build, you're naturally a threat. So there's just so many things that come with it, that there's a fear of, oh my gosh, if I get kicked out of my tribe, that means I have no access to family, to food, or to shelter. Literally the epitome of living back then. So can you imagine someone today with millions of lives contributing, who have this type of trauma, and then you live today, and of course we've built mechanisms that separate us from having to experience those types of things. But when you go to a job, do you see the relation that you may not want to say something to your boss or in front of your coworkers? And it doesn't have to be anything inappropriate, but it could be creativity. And creativity comes out of, vulnerability. So that's almost like another form of a tribe, afraid to speak because you're afraid to offend, because offending someone or a group could really mean almost life or death for you. So when you realize these things, you almost have to give yourself a little bit of love, a little bit of tenderness, because just like this trauma is inside of us, the responses to avoid these traumas is also in us as well. So you have to be gentle with yourself. There's years and years of programming inside of you. So I say all of this. I say all of this because in regards to the Black community, and for the sake of the goal of the video, specifically the Black community, our trauma is very recent. I had a picture up here that said like the Ice Age, where a lot of the world was frozen over for some odd millions of years. Very, very traumatic event. The Garibaldi, I don't want to say family. They're called the Garibaldi. They migrated from Africa into what is now called Europe, and they settled there before the Ice Age. So when the Ice Age happened, they went in one color and they came out another due to evolution. And we know that evolution happens over time. So if you're in an environment, in an unexpected environment, and then it happens to stay that way over millions of years, those who change usually survive. Those who adapt usually survive. Adaptation is a fundamental of humanity. So that's traumatic. When the ice is gone and you come out of it, and you've probably had to do crazy things to survive what once was an animal that you could have cared for and had with you is now an animal you've had to make the sacrifice to eat to feed your family. So there are certain these compromises that we make to continue on in this life. It's just very traumatic. The human experience is very traumatic. And so the reason why I say is because the Black experience, as far as in relation to trauma, is very recent. You have this entire human trauma, just humans in general, just being on this fucking planet in general. And now you have this, and that happened millions of years ago, and we're still affected by it. So you have something that happened 400 years ago. We're not expected to be affected by it. I was talking with someone recently, shout out to Kelly, and she was like, our people need healing. And I agree with that so much. Because there's a counter argument that you usually hear. And it usually comes from someone who's not Black. They'll say that. And they'll say, well, I have pain too. I've experienced pain too. My life is not perfect. Which is validated in, the response of, we've all experienced trauma, past and present. As far as child, like being born and going through childhood, there's, these are the perfect opportunity for trauma to occur. So it's an understandable answer. But then it's when we're all affected from this trauma from millions of years ago, but we're expected to forget something that happened 400 years ago. And we're surrounded by community who wants to deflect. Sometimes there's so many allies, so I'm definitely not acknowledging them. There are so many allies. It's a beautiful time to be alive. But for the other ones, we're expected to forget in this instance, like it's been this long ago, but we still have programmed responses in us from things that happened millions of years ago. And that is just due to the build of who we are. And so while we all have this basis of communal trauma, because we hold the pains and the joys of the many eyes, lips, ears that have come before us. We have everything that they have said, everything that they have heard, everything that they've seen inside of us. at least a piece of it. And so a rendition of that same pain around survival was enacted for the people forcibly migrated here in 1619. And this time, with the complexities of an established societal infrastructure, no longer are the days that lands are ruled by the largest, fastest, and best fighter. And the previous form of leadership, an animalistic form of leadership at that, but that was how we chose leaders. But now you're coming into, I can't, being the biggest, best fighter doesn't get you out of this. It's much more, it was much more intelligent. And like I said earlier, I'm making this video as a mission to reflect on as an entryway to the vast conversations that I would like to have. I felt compelled by a higher power to make this video, and as Black people and as a Black person, to capitalize on the opportunities at hand. I think a portion of our focus needs to go towards healing. But it is so nuanced. Healing is very nuanced for our people because we all have different takes on it. We all have different takes on who should heal us. Should we heal ourselves? Am I due something? I'm owed something. Because we were viewed in such a way without, and now but we always had this inner knowledge that by basic human law, we had value. We had a right to live and a right to live our lives the way we wanted to. And that comes from millions of years of there's these laws that are, there's these rights that are already in us. And it's not coming from nowhere. This is coming from our ancestors. So I would like to host a space to hold these growth-centered conversations, and there is more content to come around this nature. But I think the next things that I want to talk on are going to be definitely involved around anthropology as it relates to the Black community. And I would like to say that as a Black person, especially if you're watching this video, your pain is valid. If someone can still be hurt from something that happened thousands upon thousands of years ago and not have even changed their response to it, you're valid in feeling the way you feel about something that happened to you 400 years ago. Intense trauma 400 years ago. Not 400 years ago, but that started 400 years ago and continued on, and actually still continued until this day. We have slavery, and then we have Jim Crow. Not even Jim Crow. Let's not even skip that, but there's Black laws. I think a lot of times many people wonder, well, after becoming free, why didn't slaves just leave? It's because they couldn't. It was illegal. You cannot cross state lines without some form of a permission slip, what is almost just like saying your free papers. Without your free papers, you're not free. You're not free to go where you want to go. And then you have Jim Crow and the invention of convicts and felons, institutionalizing our people back into slavery. For petty crimes, I will take you for the rest of your life to an institution where you shall now work for free. And then, I think everyone's familiar with the civil rights era and police brutality, which is not new, although I think sometimes we think it's such a new thing, but that's something that's been happening, something that's been around, especially as far as when you see the correlation between slave catchers and police. While they now serve a larger need for society as far as within their job description, the derivative of why their position was needed has a lineage and link between bounty hunters for slaves. And then you go from civil rights, the death of leaders in our communities, And then now there's this lull, as far as in you fight so much and you get tired of fighting. And I think a lot of us are the children of parents whose parents were tired of fighting, or themselves were tired of fighting. And then I think the last stage, as far as in from the 70s to the 90s and early 2000s, it doesn't have a name quite yet, but I think the name of it will be gatekeeping. Access to jobs of higher salaries, jobs that would influence change within the wealth gap, and knowledge, knowing about credit, how to fix your credit. A lot of times people are like, we didn't know this back then, because they didn't have access. The internet was there, but it's a new tool, and you don't come in immediately always knowing how to manipulate the tools for you, because you're still learning. And so now that we've had the internet for 30 years, however long, I don't know, we're using it resourcefully for ourselves, which is a beautiful thing. And we're sharing knowledge that unfortunately some of our peers within America have had for years. So it's an interesting time to be alive. But there's so much opportunity in it. And I want to start having conversations to let people speak to that now. And so I really do appreciate you for watching this video. If you've made it this far, random pictures, mechanisms. See, what shelters used to look like versus what shelters look like now. But I do appreciate you for watching, and I really do hope you come back and you listen in. I'm debating on whether my next video will be on scarcity, pleasure, our childhood and forgiving our parents. So it'll be interesting, but thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.